Welcome to this week's episode of Insight. During this week's show, we're going to cover two primary items. The first one is going to be the departure of the EU representative to the region, Toivo Klaar. And then we're going to close with some comments about what we had this week, which was the 109th anniversary of this beginning of the Armenian Genocide. This week it was announced that Toivo Klaar, which was the special representative for the European Union into our region, will be leaving his post. What we have found is some very interesting audio and video footage of a meeting between Mr. Klaar and Hghman Hajayev, who's the primary foreign policy advisor to the president of Azerbaijan, following up with an actual meeting between Mr. Klaar and the staff of the Azeri Foreign Ministry. Let's watch the video.
Congratulations.
Here's your graduation present.
So what for? I got pinched.
Everybody gets pinched, but you did it right. You told them nothing, and they got nothing.
I thought you'd be mad.
Man, I'm not mad. I'm proud of you. You took your first pinch like a man, and you learned the two greatest things in life.
What?
Look at me. Never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut.
Leaving his current post, Mr. Klaar has actually been appointed as the new European Union's ambassador to the country of Uzbekistan. May God help the Uzbek people. Now we're going to move on to the second item of this week, which is my comments and observations about the 109th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. But in actuality, that's not what I'm going to be talking about. What I'm going to be talking about is the events of last year. September, October, the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh, which in technical and all legal understandings of the world was actually the second Armenian genocide. First and foremost, the second Armenian genocide was carried out pretty much by the heirs of the first Armenian genocide, with essentially the same ideology underpinning it, with exactly the same bystanders who sat down comfortably and did nothing, and in fact, in many cases, were quite approving of the events and the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh last September and October. Second thing is, what's critical is for us to really comprehend the full scale of what happened last year. Here in the 21st century, on European soil, more than 100,000 people were ethnically cleansed out of their ancestral home that they can trace back living there for almost 2,000 years. Simply because of their ethnicity and their religion. And all of this was done while the criminals who carried it out have faced absolutely no repercussions for what is up to now really one of the biggest crimes of this century, while we, on our end, were too weak or pathetic to act to stop it. What we have learned is that no one anywhere can guarantee the life and safety of Armenians except us. That has been true from Sardarabad earlier in the last century to the first Artsakh war. Whatever we have, whatever we hold, is what we're willing to fight and defend for ourselves. People always ask me, who's going to give us security guarantees with all these discussions with the European Union, with the United States, Russia, or whoever. There is no such thing. Let's just understand that. And even if such a thing existed, our mode of operation and our operating principle must be that there are no guarantees and you are only responsible for defending yourself and you cannot rely on anybody else. Moving on, anybody who today speaks of peace with our enemies that is negotiated on any kind of a table someplace in some meeting is actually preaching a false gospel. And why do I say that? It's simple, because Azeri statehood, their national identity, has been built entirely based on hostility towards Armenia and Armenians in general. We will never have peace with them until they fear the outcome of starting a war, and we will only have security when we, on our end, achieve full spectrum dominance. Moving on, we must understand that international rules and laws and norms are not designed to protect our rights. That being said, the same laws, norms can never act to constrain us in using all means necessary to, one, defend ourselves, and secondly, seek justice for the injustices that have been done against our people. When the phrase never again in regards to the genocide or other things like the Holocaust and other such atrocities are used by the International Committee, what we need to remember, what they're actually saying is not never again, but again and again. And there's actually a very simple reason for this, because frankly, international politics is about one thing and one thing alone: who gets to do what to whom, for how long, and at what price. Now, I want to talk specifically about Artsakh and its future. You know, our friends in the West, our enemies, and even many in our government believe or hope that the Artsakh issue has been solved due to last year's ethnic cleansing that happened there. They are wrong. Unless the crimes of last year are justly addressed, they will simply only lead to future wars. Now, why does this need to be the case? Because, to quote the great American novelist William Faulkner, the past is not dead, it's not even past. In short, without justice, we will not have lasting peace. Closing on this item, the truth is that the mystic cords of memory that connect the Armenian nation to Artsakh stretch back thousands of years, and they're not going to be severed neither by a feckless government in Yerevan, a criminal one in Baku, or the indifference of the rest of the world. Our task moving forward from this point on is to imbue this great Artsakh catastrophe with great patterns of redemption. Redemption means many things. The first one being that what has been going on for the past 3.5 years, and it's still going on, should never be allowed to repeat itself again moving forward. This can only be guaranteed by one thing: for us to never be poor, weak, or isolated again. Our collective will must be laser focused on continued economic development, state building, and building maximum military capacity. To achieve these goals in real terms, there's really no alternative but to political, military, and economic integration into the West, while at the same time having absolutely no illusions about who we're dealing with. The other front on this is to pursue justice in all fronts aggressively. And in short, this has to do with the ICC filings, and to do it now. Everyone must understand that there's a price to be paid by committing the kinds of crimes that have been committed against our people for the last 3.5 years. The ICC filings are actually a national security issue, because that is the one thing outside of individual sanctions that the Aliyev regime fears. And once the filings are done, it actually makes further aggressions much harder, because this will be the sword of Damocles that hangs over the regime, that any action that they take, they will fear will lead to criminal prosecution. In conclusion, we must fully embrace the silence and the contempt of the world, which was so clearly displayed for all of us to see last year, into creating the intrepidness that we need to imbue into our collective souls and behavior. More importantly, we need to understand that the only thing that matters is raw power in all of its manifestations. At last, the old gods are dead. Power ruthlessly exercised in pursuit of justice is the only altar worth praying towards. Thank you for joining me in this week's episode of Insights.
We will fight viciously to be first. This is what my great love demands. We will find enemies to hate. We will chase figures and phantoms. Yet, the war that we wage upon each other will be the supreme fight. Good and evil, rich and poor, high and low, all sacred words will be weapons in our hands, targets showing us that life must again and again surpass itself. Life will ascend higher, grappling upon itself, feet upon its lower versions, until the excellent stand champions. Through them, life itself will gaze into remote distances, out towards blissful beauties that you and I will never see.